The sound of the gunshot split the night like thunder. Margaret froze, her body trembling as the bullet struck the brick wall just inches above her head. Olivia screamed and ducked behind her, tears streaking her face. "Run!" Margaret hissed. They sprinted down the narrow alley, their footsteps echoing on the wet pavement. Another shot rang out, then another, the bullets whistling past them as they turned the corner. Margaret's lungs burned, but she didn't stop. She'd lived too long and fought too hard to die like this. Not now, not when the truth was so close. At the end of the street, an old delivery truck sat idling beside a dumpster. The driver, startled by the commotion, jumped out and ran, leaving the door open. Margaret grabbed Olivia's hand. "Get in." They scrambled inside, slamming the doors shut just as the black car screeched around the corner. Margaret ducked low, her heart pounding in her ears. Through the windshield, she saw two men step out of the car. One of them held a pistol. The other, she recognized immediately. Mr. Carmichael. His face was cold and expressionless, the same man who used to smile politely when asking her to serve tea. Now he was hunting her. "Find them," he shouted. "They couldn't have gone far." Olivia gasped, tears in her eyes. "He's really going to kill us." Margaret put a hand on her shoulder. "Not if I can help it." She looked at the keys still in the ignition. Without thinking twice, she twisted them. The truck roared to life. The men turned at the sound. "Hold on," Margaret yelled, slamming her foot on the gas. The truck lurched forward, tires screeching as it barreled down the street. Mr. Carmichael dove out of the way, shouting curses that faded behind them. For a few minutes, the only sounds were the roaring engine and their heavy breathing. Then Olivia whispered, "Where are we going?" Margaret kept her eyes on the road. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere he can't find us." They drove through the night, leaving the city lights behind. By dawn, they reached a quiet fishing town on the coast, a place Margaret knew well. She parked the truck behind an old abandoned diner and turned to Olivia. "We'll stay here for a while. I have a friend nearby who can help." Olivia looked pale and exhausted, her mascara smeared. "I never thought he'd go this far," she murmured. "He's lost everything, and now he's desperate." Margaret nodded grimly. Desperate men are dangerous. But they also make mistakes. She pulled out the flash drive she'd hidden in her coat. "And this," she said, holding it up, "is the mistake he'll regret for the rest of his life." Olivia frowned. "What's on it?" "Proof," Margaret said simply. "Bank transfers. Fake donations. Offshore accounts. Everything your father's been hiding, including evidence of bribery and tax fraud. I took it the night I was fired." Olivia stared at her in shock. "You knew all along?" Margaret gave a faint smile. "When you clean someone house for years, you learn what kind of dirt they leave behind." By mid-morning, Margaret called Thomas Reed, the journalist. He picked up immediately. "Margaret, thank God you're okay. The news says you've gone missing." "I'm safe," she said. "But listen carefully. I have something for you. Something that will end this once and for all." She explained everything, the files, the attack, and Olivia's testimony. Thomas was silent for a moment. Then he said, "If what you're saying is true, this could destroy the Carmichaels. But it's dangerous. Once we publish this, they'll come after both of you." "They already have," Margaret said. "So we might as well make it worth their while." Thomas agreed to meet them that night at a safe location. As night fell, Margaret and Olivia waited in the diner. The ocean wind howled outside, rattling the broken windows. Olivia sat across from her, nervously twisting her fingers. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Working for us all those years, being loyal to people who didn't deserve it?" Margaret looked at her thoughtfully. "No," she said. "I don't regret being kind. I regret trusting cruelty disguised as class." Olivia's eyes welled with tears. "I'm sorry. For everything." Margaret gave a small nod. "You're not your father, Olivia. But now you have to decide which side of this you're on. Because after tonight, there's no going back." Olivia swallowed hard. "I'm with you." Before Margaret could reply, headlights flashed outside the diner. She stood up, tense, then relaxed when she saw Thomas stepping out of a gray sedan, carrying a briefcase. He hurried inside. You made it, he said, relief on his face. Let's see what we've got. Margaret plugged the flash drive into his laptop. The files loaded instantly, spreadsheets, account statements, charity records. Enough evidence to ruin the Carmichaels' empire. Thomas's eyes widened as he scrolled. This is massive. Once I publish this, it'll be all over the news by morning. Margaret smiled faintly. Then let's make history. But before Thomas could click send, the diner lights flickered. Then the sound of an engine outside. Margaret's stomach dropped. Olivia peeked through the window, and her face went pale. It's them. Headlights. 2 black SUVs pulling up, doors opening. Armed men stepping out. Mr. Carmichael was leading them. Thomas looked terrified. How did they find us? Margaret's voice was steady. Because the moment you touch power that's built on lies, it strikes back. She grabbed the laptop, shoved it into her bag, and turned to Olivia. We need to move now. But before they could reach the back door, a familiar voice boomed through the night. Margaret Collins. Mr. Carmichael shouted. You think you can destroy me? Hand over the files, and maybe I'll let you live. Margaret took a deep breath, her pulse racing. He's bluffing, she whispered. Margaret. Thomas started, but she raised her hand to silence him. She stepped toward the window, glaring into the darkness where Carmichael stood. You already took my name, she called out. You ruined my reputation. You tried to kill me. But you forgot one thing. Her voice grew louder, stronger. You can't bury the truth. Mr. Carmichael's smirk vanished. Don't test me, old woman. Margaret reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and hit a single button. Carmichael froze as her voice echoed from his phone in his pocket. A live call. She'd been recording everything. Say hello to the world, Mr. Carmichael, she said coldly. You're live on air. The moment those words left Margaret's lips, you're live on air. The world outside the diner seemed to freeze. Mr. Carmichael's confident smirk cracked for the first time. He fumbled for his phone, pulling it out of his pocket. The screen glowed bright in the dark, showing a live call with the City Morning Show, one of the most watched radio programs in the state. Every word he'd just said, his threat to kill her, his confession of corruption, had gone straight through the airwaves. Millions of people were listening. You, he stammered, eyes blazing. You tricked me. Margaret stood tall, her wrinkled face calm but fierce. No, Mr. Carmichael, she said softly. I simply let you speak for yourself. Rage twisted his face. He shouted to his men. Get her. Now. Gunfire exploded outside, bullets tearing through the diner windows. Thomas dove behind the counter while Olivia screamed, covering her ears. Margaret dragged her down to the floor. Shards of glass raining around them. Stay low, she yelled. Thomas shouted from behind the counter. The call went through. It's everywhere. The police will hear it too. Margaret nodded grimly. Then we just need to survive until they get here. The men outside stormed toward the diner doors, kicking them open. The hinges snapped, and boots thundered across the floor. Mr. Carmichael followed behind them, gun in hand, his face wild. You think you can ruin me, you miserable old witch? He pointed the gun straight at her. For a moment, everything went silent, except the wind howling through the broken glass. Then a voice came from behind him. Drop it, Robert. He turned. Standing in the doorway was Olivia, holding Thomas's phone, which was still connected to the live radio call. Her voice shook, but she stood firm. Dad, everyone's heard you. It's over. He blinked, stunned. Olivia, what are you doing? I'm doing what Mom should have done years ago, telling the truth, she said, tears glistening in her eyes. You destroyed everything good in this family. For a moment, the proud, furious man looked lost. Then fury took over again. You ungrateful brat. He raised his gun toward her. But Margaret stepped between them. Enough, she shouted. You've taken enough lives. He hesitated, just for a second. But it was enough. Red and blue lights flashed outside the diner. Sirens wailed. Police cars skidded to a stop around the building, officers shouting commands. Drop your weapon. Mr. Carmichael spun around, panic flashing across his face. He hesitated, then pointed the gun toward Margaret again. Don't do it. Olivia cried. But before he could fire, a shot rang out, from outside. A police sniper had taken the shot. The gun flew from his hand, clattering across the floor. Mr. Carmichael screamed in pain, clutching his arm as officers burst into the diner, tackling his men to the ground. Margaret stood frozen, breathing heavily. The chaos blurred around her, shouting, handcuffs clicking, Thomas yelling for paramedics. Then she felt Olivia's arms wrap around her. You're okay, the girl whispered. For the first time in years, Margaret let herself cry. Not from fear, but from relief. Hours later, the diner was quiet again. Police had taken everyone for questioning, but Margaret and Olivia were allowed to rest in a nearby cafe. Thomas sat beside them, his laptop open as the first headlines appeared online. Carmichael family exposed in massive fraud scandal. Housekeeper's hidden evidence brings down high-profile family. Live radio broadcast captures threat and confession. Margaret stared at the glowing screen. It didn't feel real. Thomas smiled faintly. You did it, Margaret. You really did it. Margaret shook her head. No. They did it to themselves. Olivia nodded softly. The truth just needed a voice. Thomas closed his laptop. Well, it has one now, yours. Days turned into weeks. The scandal dominated every news channel. The Carmichaels' empire crumbled overnight. Their charities were shut down, their assets frozen. And Mr. Carmichael was arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and attempted murder. Mrs. Carmichael vanished from public view. Too ashamed to face the world she once ruled. And Margaret? She became an unexpected symbol of courage. The quiet woman who brought justice to the powerful. News reporters called her the housekeeper who spoke truth to power. She didn't enjoy the fame, but she did enjoy watching justice being done. Olivia stayed close to her, refusing to abandon the woman who had saved her life. Together, they moved into a small seaside cottage, far away from the noise and cameras. Every morning, Margaret would sit by the window, sipping her tea as the ocean breeze drifted in. Sometimes Olivia would join her, and they'd talk for hours, about life, about choices, about kindness. One morning, Olivia asked quietly, "Do you ever miss them? The life you had before?" Margaret thought for a long moment. "I miss the parts of myself I lost trying to please people who didn't deserve it," she said. "But I don't miss the lies. And I don't miss the silence." Olivia smiled faintly. "You know, I think my grandmother would have liked you." Margaret chuckled softly. "I would have liked her too." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun rise over the sea. Then Olivia reached over and took her hand. "Thank you," she whispered. Margaret smiled gently. "For what?" "For teaching me that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers and still wins." But as peaceful as it seemed, Margaret knew deep down that stories like hers never truly ended. Because even when justice is done, there are always others. Powerful people hiding behind smiles, waiting for their turn to fall. And when that day came, she'd be ready to help the next quiet soul find their voice too. It had been 3 months since the night everything changed. The Carmichaels' mansion on Willow Lane now stood empty, its tall iron gates rusted, the windows dark and the fountain dry. Reporters had long stopped coming, and the once flawless gardens were overgrown with weeds. The mighty had fallen. But far away from that cold, lifeless house, in a quiet seaside town, Margaret Collins found peace. She lived simply, tending a small garden, feeding stray cats, and walking along the beach every morning with Olivia by her side. To outsiders, they looked like grandmother and granddaughter. And in many ways, that's exactly what they had become. But the peace Margaret had fought so hard to win was about to be tested again. In a way she never saw coming. It started one cool autumn afternoon. Margaret was sweeping her front porch when a gray envelope slipped through the mail slot. No name. No return address. Just her first name scrawled across it in neat handwriting. Margaret. Something about it made her uneasy. She wiped her hands on her apron and slowly opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper and one photograph. The photo showed Olivia sitting at a cafe earlier that week, laughing with a friend. The note beneath it read, "You thought it was over. It's not." Margaret's hand trembled slightly. She scanned the street, empty. Only the sound of waves and distant seagulls. Her heart began to race. Someone was watching them. That evening, when Olivia came home from her volunteer shift at the community clinic, Margaret showed her the note. Olivia's face went pale. Who would do this? My father's in prison. Mom's gone. It can't be them. Margaret frowned. Not directly, maybe. But when you expose people like the Carmichaels, you don't just destroy a family. You ruin their partners, their investors, their allies. Some of those people won't forgive easily. Olivia sank into a chair. You think it's revenge? Margaret nodded slowly. Someone wants to scare us. Maybe even silence us. But they made a mistake. Olivia looked up, confused. What mistake? Margaret's eyes hardened. They reminded me what it feels like to be afraid, and I promised myself I'd never live that way again. The next day, Margaret went to see Thomas Reed, the journalist who had helped her. He was now working for a major news network after. His report on the Carmichaels became the most watched expose of the year. Thomas greeted her warmly, but frowned when he read the note. This isn't just a threat, Margaret. It's surveillance. Whoever took that picture had to be close. Can you trace it? She asked. He nodded. I can try. But I need you to be careful. People still hate what you did, especially those who lost money when the Carmichaels fell. There are still plenty of dirty hands in that mess. Margaret sighed. I never wanted to ruin anyone's life. I just wanted the truth to be heard. Thomas gave a small smile. And that's exactly why you're dangerous to them. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. Margaret would come home to find her front gate unlatched, though she was sure she'd locked it. Olivia's car tires were slashed one morning. And late at night, Margaret would sometimes see headlights lingering outside their cottage, then disappearing when she looked closer. The peace that once surrounded their lives began to feel fragile, like thin glass ready to crack. One night, unable to sleep, Margaret sat by the window with a cup of tea. The ocean waves shimmered under the moonlight. She thought about everything she'd been through. The lies, the fear, the loss. And she thought of Emily, her daughter, who never got to see her mother's victory. Tears welled up in her eyes. If you can hear me, my girl, she whispered softly. Give me strength to protect the only family I have left. Just then her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Meet me at the old Carmichael estate. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. I have information about who's targeting you. Come alone. Margaret stared at the screen for a long time. Every instinct told her it was a trap. But if someone really was after them, she needed to know who. The next evening, she left Olivia a note on the kitchen table. I'll be back soon. Don't worry. And drove out to the abandoned mansion on Willow Lane. The air around the place felt colder than usual. The gates creaked as she pushed them open. Inside, the once bright chandeliers hung broken, and the grand staircase was covered in dust. She walked slowly through the halls that once echoed with laughter and cruelty. Memories flickered with every step. The smell of lemon polish, the sound of Mrs. Carmichael's heels, the faint giggles of the children she once loved like her own. Now it was silent. She reached the study. The same room where her revenge had first begun. The door was slightly open, and a faint light glowed inside. Margaret took a deep breath and pushed it open. Someone was sitting in the chair behind the old mahogany desk. Her breath caught in her throat. It was Mrs. Carmichael. Alive. Her once flawless beauty was gone. Her hair unkempt, her eyes sunken, her face pale with bitterness. You look surprised, Mrs. Carmichael said, her voice low and trembling with venom. You thought I'd crawl into some hole and die, didn't you? Margaret didn't flinch. I thought you'd learned what humility feels like. Mrs. Carmichael laughed, a hollow, broken sound. Humility? No, Margaret. I learned something better. Hatred. You took everything from me. My husband, my name, my life. And now, I'm taking something from you. From behind the desk, she pulled out a folder and tossed it onto the table. Inside were photos of Margaret and Olivia, taken over the past few weeks. At the market. At the beach. Through their windows. Margaret's blood ran cold. You've been watching us. Mrs. Carmichael smiled. Not me. Someone who owes me a favor. See, I still have friends, powerful ones. And they want you gone as much as I do. Margaret clenched her fists. You can't scare me. Mrs. Carmichael leaned forward. Oh, I'm not trying to scare you, dear. I'm warning you. Leave this town before you end up like your daughter. That last sentence hit like a slap. Margaret's voice trembled with fury. Don't you dare say her name. But Mrs. Carmichael only smirked. She paid for your mistakes. Don't make Olivia pay too. Before Margaret could respond, a sudden noise came from outside, footsteps. Mrs. Carmichael's eyes darted toward the door, and her smile faltered. He's here, she whispered. Who? Margaret demanded. But before she could answer, the lights went out. The mansion fell into darkness. A man's deep voice echoed from the hallway. Mrs. Carmichael, you didn't tell me she'd actually show up. Margaret's heart pounded. She knew that voice. She couldn't place it, but she knew it. Mrs. Carmichael stepped back, fear flickering in her eyes. I just wanted to scare her, not. The man stepped into the doorway, his face hidden in shadow. Oh, don't worry, he said coldly. She'll be more than scared when I'm done. Margaret took a step back. Who are you? He stepped closer, and as the dim light from the window hit his face, her eyes widened in horror. It was the Carmichaels' former lawyer. The man who had handled all their illegal dealings, the one she'd exposed in her files. Only he wasn't in prison. He was free. And now he wanted revenge of his own. And as he reached into his coat pocket, pulling out something metallic that glinted in the moonlight, Margaret realized. The metallic click echoed through the empty mansion like a thunderclap. Margaret froze. The figure stepped fully into the room now, tall, sharp-faced, wearing a long black coat that brushed against the dusty floor. In his right hand gleamed a small pistol fitted with a silencer. The man's cold eyes studied her, his mouth twisting into a cruel half-smile. Good evening, Mrs. Collins, he said. It's been a long time. Margaret recognized him instantly, Mr. Harlan Pierce, the Carmichaels' former lawyer. The same man who had handled their illegal donations. The same one she'd exposed in the evidence that took the family down. Harlan, she said, her voice steady though her hands shook slightly. I thought you were in prison. He chuckled. I was for a few months. Money can buy freedom, even now. Mrs. Carmichael stood off to the side, trembling slightly. Harlan, this wasn't the plan. I just wanted to. Shut up, he snapped. You wanted revenge. I'm giving you that. He turned back to Margaret, raising the gun. You destroyed my career, my life, my family's name. I lost everything because of you. Margaret didn't back away. You lost everything because of your lies. I just told the truth. He smirked. Then tell me the truth about this. How does it feel to know your daughter didn't die by accident? Margaret's breath caught. What did you say? He tilted his head. Oh, you didn't know? Mrs. Carmichael's face went white. Harlan, don't. He ignored her. That hospital she died in, it wasn't random. Your daughter worked for a clinic connected to one of my clients. She found some documents she shouldn't have seen. Documents that tied the Carmichaels Foundation to offshore accounts. She was going to talk. Margaret's vision blurred. Her hands gripped the table for support. You're lying. Am I? He sneered. Your daughter was a good girl. Too good. But good people are dangerous when they start asking questions. So we made sure she stopped asking. Mrs. Carmichael gasped. You told me it was a heart attack. It was convenient to say that, Harlan said flatly. The clinic handled it quietly. No police, no scandal. Margaret's knees almost gave out. She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. You murdered my daughter. Harlan's tone turned cruel. You and your nosy little girl thought you could expose us. Now you'll join her. He raised the gun. But before he could fire, Mrs. Carmichael lunged forward. No, she screamed, grabbing his arm. The gun went off, the shot exploding through the study window. Harlan shoved her aside, furious. You idiot. Margaret stumbled backward, heart pounding, grabbing for something, anything. Her hand closed around a heavy brass candle holder from the mantelpiece. As Harlan turned back toward her, she swung. The metal connected with a sickening crack. He fell to the floor, dropping the gun. Margaret gasped for breath, her heart racing. Harlan groaned, clutching his head. But he wasn't finished. He reached out for the gun again. Mrs. Carmichael scrambled across the floor, grabbed it first and pointed it at him, hands shaking. "Don't move," she whispered. Harlan glared at her, blood dripping from his temple. "You don't have the guts." But for once, Mrs. Carmichael's voice didn't tremble. "You destroyed me. You destroyed her daughter. You've destroyed enough lives." He sneered and lunged. The shot echoed through the house. Silence followed. When Margaret opened her eyes, Harlan lay motionless on the floor. Mrs. Carmichael dropped the gun, shaking violently. He's dead," she whispered. Margaret stood still, for a long moment, staring down at the man who had haunted her for years. Her tears finally fell, not for him but for Emily, for the truth that had been stolen from her. Mrs. Carmichael looked at her with hollow eyes. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he did that to your daughter." Margaret didn't answer. Her mind swirled with pain and disbelief. The truth she had fought for all these years had cost her more than she ever imagined. Finally, she said softly, "Now you do. And you'll live with that." She turned toward the door. "I'm calling the police." Mrs. Carmichael nodded weakly. "I'll tell them everything. I'm tired of lying." By the time the police arrived, the mansion was surrounded by flashing lights once again. Just like the day the Carmichaels' empire had fallen. Officers rushed inside, taking statements, photographing the scene. Margaret sat quietly on the front steps, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sunrise through the broken iron gates. Thomas Reed arrived minutes later, rushing to her side. "Margaret, are you all right? I heard." She nodded faintly. "It's over, Thomas. For real this time." He crouched beside her. "What happened?" She looked out toward the sea, her voice barely above a whisper. "The truth found me again. It always does." He frowned. "And Mrs. Carmichael? She's telling the police everything," Margaret said. "About Harlan. About Emily." Thomas's face softened. "I'm so sorry, Margaret. You didn't deserve any of this." Margaret looked down at her trembling hands. "Maybe not. But if my story helps another mother find courage to fight, then it was worth it." Later that day, Olivia arrived at the station, frantic until she saw Margaret sitting safely in the waiting area. "Grandma," she cried, hugging her tightly. "You're okay. I was so scared." Margaret smiled weakly, resting her hand on the girl's cheek. "It's over, my dear. No more running. No more fear." Olivia sat beside her, holding her hand. "Then we'll go home?" "Yes," Margaret whispered. "Home." But deep down, she knew the word home meant something new now. It wasn't a place, it was peace. That evening, Margaret returned to her seaside cottage. The wind was calm, the ocean gentle. She lit a candle by her window and whispered a quiet prayer. "For you, Emily," she said softly. "Justice has been done." As the flame flickered, a strange calm filled her heart. For the first time in years, she felt her daughter's presence, warm, forgiving, proud. Olivia entered the room quietly, setting down 2 cups of tea. "For us," she said with a smile. Margaret smiled back. "For us." They sat together in silence, the ocean humming softly in the distance. The world outside still carried its chaos, but inside that little cottage, the past had finally found peace. Yet somewhere, far away, in a dimly lit office downtown, a man watched the news coverage on his screen. He replayed the report about Harlan Pierce's death, his fingers tapping the desk slowly. Then he smiled. "Margaret Collins," he murmured. "You have no idea who you've really crossed." He closed the laptop. The screen went dark. And with it, the peace Margaret had fought for began to tremble once again.